welcome to another episode of the Microshift Project. I'm your host, as always, Nicholas Valinchak. That's Nicky V if you're nasty. And I'm excited to bring you back into my world as I'm going through the process of telling the story of my 5 microshifts that really shook the foundation of where I was at and allowed me a path to where I am. On the last episode, we talked about some strangers that stopped for a gangly, broken down, drug addict, unwashed kid who was 21 years old and completely hopeless at the time. And today we're going to talk about the second of those 5 microshifts that I believe impacted me to the core. And it really isn't but 2 weeks time between Microshift 1 and Microshift 2 that time lapses. And in that time is something I don't really get to talk about a lot when I'm on stage, because typically you're doing a 20 or 30 minute speech. Maybe, if you're lucky, if you're the main event of the evening, you might get an hour. But it's really important to be able to hit on these 5 things fast, and I'm getting typically like 4 minutes to tell a story, and you have to add flair and excitement and context around it. It can't just be, like you're shooting the shit with your friends who we've all sat and told these war stories 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15, 20, 25 times a year for the last 2 decades, right? So stuff sometimes gets left out, the nitty-gritty details. And I remember, these last 2 weeks of chaos, for me, I can remember a lot of crazy stuff happening. For the first time in my life, I was like kind of, I had like, this was the first time I feel like I really had like supreme confidence, and I would go out to the bar and stuff and, figure out how to come up with like $10 and be able to buy a few drinks and buy girls drinks. I had confidence to where I was able to talk to women, end up kind of going back to their place with them. I never really made big moves on it, like, cause I'm a coward with women at the time. I still probably am. But it was still just the fact that I was doing things I wasn't able to do before. I was still on my bullshit, though. I remember one specific situation where I robbed one of my friends. I stole a PlayStation from him. I did not take the cologne. You have to understand that. If he ever listens to that, he will be the only person that gets the reference. But I was so brazen and audacious because I just did not give a fuck. And you have to understand, like, it wasn't like I was some dude who was ready to like get down and throw down. I just didn't care, and I was, I guess, doing things to maybe try to have the worst happen to me. At 6'1", 135, you're all drugged out. You're not really in a position where you're likely to be able to throw down with much success. But brazen as always, I had the audacity to rob this dude and sell his PlayStation, and then go to the bar he worked at that night and spend money. And there's an area in Youngstown, and there's like these 2 bars that were at most like a half mile apart. And I could obviously feel the tension because, I'm brazen, but I'm not stupid. I could feel the fact that he obviously knew what I had done. Because he's the DJ there, and he's taking little shots at me. And so I think to myself, like, well, fuck this. I'm going to go to the bar up the street. It was called the Sandbar at the time. And so I'm like, I'm low on gas. So I'm actually just going to walk to the Sandbar. And that's exactly what I did. I started walking down Mahoning Avenue, took the right-hand turn. I can't remember what the street's called, that bridges, that connects Mahoning to Meridian. But I'm walking up there, and I sense that there's this car that like starts following me, and I'm like, kind of just I'm kind of like trying to keep an eye on it out of the corner of my eye, because I understand that like if something goes down where I determine it's bad enemies, right? I think, you know, there were certain people who, if I had seen them, I would know that like this is a fight, this is a flight situation, right? You got to go, right? The people who you just made eye contact are going to try to do like terminal harm to you, you know? And then there's people who, you're just like, yeah, they might get out and say some shit. You might have to take a few punches, but like that's probably the most that goes on. So I'm watching the car creeping along, and it comes to a stop, and I keep walking, but they had to see that like I'm kind of like looking out of this, my left eye trying to see what happens. And then it's like a dude gets out of the passenger side, and he looks to be maybe a little bit older than me, a couple years older than me. He's like, "Oh man, I got to piss." So I let my guard down. I'm like, "I hear you, bro. Like you do what you got. I'm walking to the bar up here, whatever you do your business like you got to do your business. I ain't interfering with it." So I just keep walking, and 10 seconds later, I hear poop, 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 footsteps behind me, and I just feel pow right in the back of my head. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Now you got to understand, I'm Mike Valinchak's son. And what that means is this dude was a big guy, and he was putting a whooping on me for years. And at a time when I didn't deserve it, really, I was just a kid and maybe like, doing stupid stuff, but I wasn't doing the stupid stuff I am now. So I could take a punch. And I turn around, and now there's two of them, and I'm getting pop, 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 pop. And I must have taken this for like 30 seconds. And I remember being very drunk and thinking to myself, like, hey, they keep punching you. You should like fall down so that this, maybe they'll stop. So like one of them punches me, I drop, and I'm like, all right, cool, they're done. And then they start kicking me. I'm like, come on, man. How is this my luck that I got some kickers? You know what I mean? I figured maybe it would be like bap bap, give you, rough you up 30 seconds, whatever. I knew they were going to try to go for my wallet, right? And as someone who is a thief, and as someone who is a degenerate, and as someone who is trying to survive in this process, I had to develop like techniques to make sure that I would be okay. So I never kept money in my wallet, never kept money in my pockets. Never. The only place I kept money was directly on the bottom of my foot. In my sock, I would 100% all the time, boom, right at the bottom of my foot. And I would literally, if I was going to a place like a bar or whatever, I would go into the bathroom, into the stall, and sit down and take my shoe off, pull my sock off, take exactly what I felt like I needed, put the shoes and sock back, because the acquisition of money at this point was very difficult for me, and I couldn't conceive of the idea that I would lose it to anyone. So pop, 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 these dudes punt me, boom, 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 they start kicking me. Luckily they just kind of kicking me in my midsection or whatever, and it is what it is. Then they of course go for my wallet, pull it out. Boop. Man, he ain't got no money. So then they throw the wallet down, hop back in the car. I don't see him. I get up, and I just am like, well, it is what it is. I'm not going to let this ruin my night. So I go walk to the sandbar, go to the bathroom, look at my face. I got some blood coming out of my nose. I'm roughed up. I got like bumps on my head because they're punching me. They weren't like pulling punches and shit. They were laying them down. And so I hung out there for probably like 30 minutes. And in fairness, like it was early enough in the night that I shouldn't have expected a crowd of girls. And that was a semi-popular place at the time on Friday nights where younger people were going, and I had a lot of good nights there in the previous weeks prior to that. So I was like, man, I don't know what else to do. I'm parked at Chippers, so let me walk back here. So I walk back into the bar, and the guy, my dude who I robbed, is DJing still. My buddies are there, and I know this sounds weird to some people. I'm sure there's some people who are going to hear this and be like, "What you're saying doesn't functionally make sense." Like, you robbed your friend, but your buddies are there, but they are also very much friends with the DJ, the kid who I robbed, and they're friends with me, but they're also laughing along with the DJ because I have done stuff to all of these people at this point, right? It is, you know, a very weird situation, but this is just like where I'm at in my head, that I still wanted to try to have my friends and I still wanted to be able to do my bullshit and try to live. And I walked in and dude, they were just roasting me and roasting me and roasting me. And I remember I was like, well, I'm going to be a little son of a bitch here. Like, not only have I already been a son of a bitch to this kid because I stole his PlayStation and sold it, but I'm going to go to the bathroom and pull the money out of my shoe, and I'm going to buy a drink because I know his boys called him and told him he didn't have any money. And so I went to the bathroom, sat down, looked over at him, looked over at my friends, was like, dang, I need a drink. And they all laughed, like, ain't no one buying you a drink. I'm like, no, I'll take care of it myself. And pulled out a $5 and walked up to the bar. And they all looked like they had seen ghosts because, the boys called them and said, hey, it's what it is. And then the dudes walked into the bar. And at that point, it was Clown Nick's session and whatever. And I just, I sat there for a little bit and took it. And then I was like, all right, this is like, you don't want to fuck around to the point where these people do something further. Like this could really, once they get to really, really, really drinking, like this could escalate very badly. And there is nobody in the world that is going to help you. So if it's 3-on-1 or 4-on-1, like something could bad could happen to you. Now you'll notice like kind of a little bit of a key statement I made there a little bit. In the first videos I did, I talked about how I had really like lost that interest in living, and like I was trying to figure out an easy way and a coward's way to go out, and I couldn't accomplish it. But I also had the conversation and the communication with the couple who stopped when I ran out of gas. And ever since that day, it had been something that I would dwell on when I was at points, late at night or sitting around during the day, and I had nothing else better to do but to sit and think. And, I think I was kind of starting to get to the point where I was like, man, maybe there is some type of opportunity to still get life turned around. Like I didn't know what that looked like or where it was at or how to do it, but I felt like I had, the chances that something could line up to where things could change. I was not hopeless anymore. I would definitely wouldn't say I was hopeful, but I was in the process of regaining some amount of belief that this didn't have to be my final end. And it's complicated because I think for many people who have been in addiction in that mindset, you'll understand that you will be in your active addiction doing your actual addictive tasks, whether it be getting high or hitting licks or turning tricks or whatever it might be to get your money. And while it's happening, you're not excited that you're doing it. You're even getting high. You're sometimes not like, oh, finally this relief. It starts to turn into, motherfucker, this again. Like, I need to do this, but this shit is getting old. Like, it's wearing on me. And all of the destruction that has gone on in the process of me doing this. The path of destruction that I've left behind me is embarrassing, and you start to come to like realizations a little bit about what you're doing and the impact it's not just having on yourself but other people. And this conversation I had with these people is really bringing it to light, but I'm still actively doing a lot of the same things, still going into stores, stealing stuff, still selling it to whoever will buy it for, little bits of money, just enough money to be able to survive, get $5 worth of gas every other day or maybe every day, steal my little hot dogs or taquitos from Speedway, whatever it might be. But the thoughts in the back of my head, and I don't know that I'd call it a low point, and so I had these like weird series of events, and they all may have happened in the same day, but I think it's more likely that they all happen in like a 2 or 3 day span, where the few people who would still talk to me, one of them I picked up from his apartment complex in Austintown and drove several, I don't know, 5-10 miles into the south side of Youngstown and pretended that I was, getting calls and texts on my phone. This was like the early days of text messaging. It was like, hey, can you go inside and get us a burger while the plug gets here? And then he goes inside. As soon as he gets inside the McDonald's, boom, I split with the money. I left this motherfucker to walk back. I think it has to be like 10 plus miles to his apartment, and I just didn't care because bam, now I have $100, and $100 for me could be like 5 days of living high on the hog, which pretty much comes down to, maybe getting a pill, maybe buying a bottle of vodka. And when I say pill, it probably would have been like, I think I was done with oxys then, so I do think it was less drugs and more just drinking alcohol to numb the pain in my life. So it was, probably go get a cheap fifth, but know that you have gas money, know that you can drive through McDonald's and get 3, McChickens or whatever, and bam, now you can eat like that for 5 days in a row, and that's $15, and you still have money for gas and booze and stuff like that. And I basically did the same thing to another one of my dudes. In fact, the dude who walked all the way back to his apartment, I'm at another kid's house trying to run game on him, and this dude calls, and I still managed to pull off $100. I was trying to get like $400 from this kid, still managed to pull off $100, ran the same kind of scam, took the money, left. Finally, I want to say, and I'm not proud of this, and I wouldn't say like I went back to the apartment complex where I had been living with my girlfriend at the time before all of this unraveled. And oh no, you know what it was? Okay. So there was a gas station, a mini mart, I think it was Sammy Quick Stop, right by the apartment, probably like a mile down the road. And I had stopped there with the money and bought a 30-pack of Coors, and I had bought a couple packs of Newports, and I saw the dude, Sean, who lived in the basement. We lived on the second floor in the basement with his mother. This dude, Sean, lived. And every once in a while, I'd give him rides places. He'd ask me, we'd smoke weed here and there, whatever, just kind of one of those people who, like, I knew it was an acquaintance. I was really leery of him because I thought he was on some other shit. And so anyway, like, I saw him there, and he was like, hey, I ain't seen you around. What's been going on? I'm like, me and old girl ain't doing the thing anymore. And he's like, oh man, were you trying to kick it tonight? And I was like, I mean, I got a 30-pack and I'm about to drive around and get drunk. He's like, well, listen, my mom's about to leave in like an hour. So if you could just drop me off at the apartment so I don't have to walk back and come back in like an hour, we could go get some stuff from the south side and we could kick it. And I was like, all right, I ain't got anything else to do. Really, in the back of my mind, I'm probably thinking to myself, like, well, if I'm kicking it at his apartment, there's some opportunity. I could see what my ex is up to, or maybe she sees me and we're able to, like, I could tell her about the situation I had with the strangers, and maybe, you know, I could get some pity points and go back, and that whole thing could resolve itself. So I'm driving around for an hour, bam, 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 just downing the booze, and there's this voice in the back of my head like, you got to stop doing this. You can't keep doing this. This is, you know, this is ridiculous. Earlier that day, I had gone to another one of my friend's house. I had planned to steal some Kalana pins from his father. But there were a bunch of people there and they saw me, and I was like, well, I can't just like drive by. I'm going to just stop and see what's up. And anyway, they ended up calling my dude, the DJ from the bar, to come confront me because they were like, hey, he's here. And, you know, you said you wanted to do something to him, so now's your time. So the dude comes over, and, you know, we have it out, not physical, but he's telling me all this stuff, and I'm like, dude, I know I did it. Like, there's nothing I can say at this point that makes the situation any better. His adopted mother was like a mother to me too. Now, I talked about how my mom died, and so she filled a real like mother role in my life for quite a few years, probably 5 years at that point. I would stay over there. We would have parties at his house. I would stay over there drunk, and, you know, I was like the one of the few people she actually was like willing to trust a little bit. And I got on the phone with her, and she was like, you know, we had to press charges, but you should definitely go to the rescue mission to, you know, get cleaned up. So I had this conversation in the back of my mind, and I was like, I was driving on the 1180, 680, that area in Youngstown. And I was like, man, you know what? The last thing I should be doing is going to kick it with this dude. He's trouble. You know, I know it's going to be some bullshit. I don't need to be going to the south side of Youngstown. I mean, I had done it plenty of times. It's not like it was a place that I was scared of being in. I would hang out there regularly, you know, buying pills from people, doing whatever. And so I was like, well, I'm going to the rescue mission. I cannot do this anymore. And so I'm driving around downtown Youngstown. I have lived here my whole life. I've never really in my adult life actually been downtown Youngstown. So I don't really know where anything's at. And I can't find the mission. I drive down what it says MLK is, and I end up like on Rayen. It's complicated, but they were kind of like one turned into the other. So it was, you know, for someone who didn't have their bearings and really know the location, it was easy to get these things confused. So anyway, I end up turning around, coming back, and just thinking like all hope is lost. And then once I thought all hope was lost, I look up and I see the building and I see the sign for the rescue mission. And this is another one of those like sign from God moments where I'm like, yeah, my car was should have died in a stupid accident. Car ends up totally popped out and fine. That's signal number one. Driving around aimlessly, being willing to give up, and then the thing you're looking for is right in front of you is definitely sign number two. And I pull in the parking lot. There was probably like 6-7 spaces out front of the rescue mission. I pull in the parking lot, put the car in park, and I'm like, I'm going to do it. And I immediately put the car in reverse and pulled back out and was like, I can't. I need to be the one that fixes my shit. I can't go to this place. I don't really know anything about it. I just know it's a place I can sleep, but I'm not looking for a place I could sleep. I need to find a place where I can change. So I get back on whatever, go over old boy's house, the apartment, pick him up. You know, I'm still just pounding away my Coors Light. Stuff's like water at this point. I've been an alcoholic for like 5 years. So like this is nothing to me. This is oftentimes just a Friday night. We go to Big A's drive-through, you know, go through the drive-through, pick up some Phillies. So I'm thinking, okay, we're gonna twist one, smoke it, maybe hang out, play video games. This is what people in their late teens, early 20s did. You know, I think he's a little older. He's probably near 30. But I'm like, this is probably what's going to happen. So I park just like right in the parking lot, out of the way of the drive-through, and someone pulls up, jumps out of their car, jumps into my car. I actually get a little spooked because I'm like, damn, I've done enough shit. I don't really know this kid. This dude could know someone I did something to, and I just set myself up and I'm about to get robbed, beat, killed, who knows. But, dude was like hyper cool. He's like, oh man, I got the shit. You know what I'm saying? Bop, 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 whoop, whoop, whoop. Have a discussion. He gets out of the car and I'm starting to drive back towards Austintown, and I asked the dude Mike, I'm like, hey, are we twisting here? Or are we doing it back at the apartment? He's like, well, I don't really twist. I smoke out of a pipe. And I was like, okay, well, I'd prefer not to smoke a pipe in my car, so I guess we'll just wait till we get back to the apartment. He's like, yeah, it's I don't have a pipe with me. I got to make one. And I'm like, okay. Whatever. So we get back to the apartment, and if you have familiarity with drugs and if you've done them in the past, I'm sure at this point in the story you understand that my guy didn't have weed. He had crack. And now I've always been a very open drug user, right? My philosophy was I'll try anything twice. But crack was something to the point where like I really looked down on people who smoked crack, and I didn't want to be one of those people who smoked crack. So I had to like think about it for a second, and I don't remember if he ended up finding a straight shooter, if he like Jimmy rigged a foil pipe or whatever it was, but he took a hit and then he passed it to me, and I was like, fuck it. I mean, what do I have to lose at this point, So I took it, held it, felt everything go, and I was like, holy shit. And I exhaled, and I expected to have the biggest rush that I had ever felt in my life, because I've heard people talk about crack. They talk about the womp, womp, womp. And I'm thinking, man, I'm about to have it hard. And I kid you not, I stand there and I'm like, motherfucker, all that happened is I'm not drunk anymore. I'm like, I just hit crack. I thought I was going to get this crack treatment, but all it did was make me sober. And I was pissed because being sober makes you face too much, And so I got mad and I was like, dude, I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm not doing this anymore. Got back in the car. I had like 2 beers left. I smashed them real quick to try to get another little buzz. And I was like, I'm just going to Walmart parking lot. And that's it. Done data. Night over. Figure this shit back out tomorrow. And now I have a whole list of new enemies of shit that I've done over the last few days that I got to try to be cautious of. And so I head down Mahoning Avenue trying to go to Walmart. And I know a bunch of things. Number one, I know that from the accident, I actually did end up cracking the tail light. So the tail light of my car is out. I know I have no license. I know I have no insurance. So as I'm driving down Mahoning Avenue, and it's not that far, it's like a 5-minute drive, maybe 7. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm just got to get there. And I'm in the right-hand lane. In the left-hand lane, I see a cop car. I don't necessarily really think anything of it until I see the cop car switch lanes and get behind me. And I was like, shit, well, I'm really good at driving intoxicated, even though at this point I was not intoxicated because I've only basically have 2 beers in my system after the crack soberized me. And I drive like a quarter mile down the road and I'm thinking to myself like, okay, nothing's happened here. So we're good to go. And as soon as I had that thought, I see the blue and red lights hit, boom. And I can honestly tell you in that moment, I felt nothing. I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel nervous. I didn't feel mad. I wasn't sad. I just felt like this is an appropriate reaction or response to the life I had been living, right? It's no wonder something like this hadn't happened sooner. but I know my shit, and I'm really nervous at this point because I have nowhere to go that has a roof over it, right? That the car is my house. So I I know that like they're going to take the car. There's no real way. I don't think I'm going to be able to convince the cop, knowing that I probably smell like booze. I have booze on the floor of the car. I'm clearly living in my car. Um, and I see the cop get out of the car, and he walks up to the cars, flashing his lights in the back seat. And listen, I've been through I've been pulled over and the cops are talking to me. I know the rigmarole that's about to happen to me. But this cop is like spending an excessive amount of time looking at the back seat of my car. And I actually do start to get a little bit nervous because I'm like, did I not remember something being back there? Did he find something that's going to make this shitty situation significantly worse? So he eventually, comes up to my window and I start rolling it down. And the conversation doesn't start the way most of the other conversations with police start. He basically looks me dead in the eye and he says, "Hey, we know you have no license. We know you have no insurance." We know you have no insurance, which means you have no license. I had an SR22 bond, which meant if I didn't have insurance, it nullified my license. We can tell that you appear to be living in your car, and we're going to have to take that. So my question to you is, if we take your car, do you have a place to lay your head tonight? And I was obviously taken aback because my experience with police has been contentious up to this point. In fact, in Canfield where I lived, I was, and this, given the construction of what I am, and I understand this is going to sound batshit crazy, but I was very heavily profiled in the area I lived in because they knew what I was doing, right? So it was a justifiable, at the time I didn't view it as that. I was being profiled because I was committing crimes. I was bringing drugs into a neighborhood they were trying to keep safe. So I wasn't used to this kind of communication with a police officer. And I told him, like, I have an apartment that's in my name and my girlfriend's, but if I go there tonight, I think you'll probably get called back because I can't imagine she's going to be happy about me being there. And I think there will be yelling and screaming. And he's like, "Yeah, we're not doing that. That's you may be able to go there legally, but that's a bad idea. You're right." So anything else? And I just told him, I was like, "No, I mean, if you'll allow me to get a couple of sweaters out and put them on, I will just find a bench to sleep on in a park." And he was like, "No, you can't do that, and I can't let you do that." He's like, "There's nowhere that you can think of that you can sleep tonight." And I thought about it and I was like, oh, if only there was a place that helped people like me, that had a place for them to sleep. It could help them maybe change their life. If only a place like this existed in the city I lived in. And I think you can all see where I'm going with this. And I looked at the cop and I was like, "Hey, how about the rescue mission?" And he radioed in, and the dispatch from Austintown Police Department, I believe, called the rescue mission and confirmed that, I could be brought there. And so while I had to say goodbye to my house home, I now had the opportunity to potentially see things change for me. And it's funny on a number of levels. So some of the takeaways that I have from this are, sometimes in life, you go to try to do something on your own willingly, and you're not willing to push yourself to the limit you need to push to do it. Sometimes life has a way of returning you there by force and saying, "No, you face your shit." And that's what I was dealing with. But also, it showed me a situation where, look, I mean, I am drunk. I have no license. I have no insurance. I have drugs in the car. I have open bottles of liquor in the car. This cop very easily could have hit me with 6 to 8 charges and pushed me further into a system that I was already relatively deep in. And I don't know. I can't tell you what it was about the situation. I don't know if he had a pleasant interaction earlier in the day, or if it was divine intervention and he just had some kind of sympathy for the situation I was dealing with. But he did not treat me as a criminal first. He treated me as a human first. And I think that was another one of those things for many nights when I was at the mission that I thought about and was like, up to that point, it had been maybe even years since I felt like someone was treating me as a person, as a human. I think, again, people who have been in addiction or are in addiction can understand how oftentimes the people we are around in those circumstances, even if they have been friends of ours for a long time, can easily come and go by our willingness or their willingness, just because of the transactional nature of addiction. And so I don't know that I'd really had like friends for a long time, because everything we were doing was around our addictions. It had at least been many, many, many months since I feel like, drugs aside, there was a genuine like human connection with people. And a lot of that might have and probably was me. But this officer, who again, I'm not sure who it is, I'm very thankful to him for giving me that option that he didn't have to, and providing me dignity when I only had despair. And so from here, next time, we're going to talk about my time at the rescue mission of Mahoning Valley. But until then, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I'm really excited because the story starts to really pick up here. And, I'm excited to tell it. I hope that other people can kind of get some insight to what it's like, or if people are going through this or have these doubts, and it doesn't have to just be a drug addict. It can be someone who's in a position where they're just in a huge self-doubt and feel the despair and don't feel like there's any way out of the circumstance that they're in. Know that you can do it. It's never too late to get your house on straight, and we can all do this together. So I encourage you all to subscribe to my podcast, whether you're watching it on YouTube, listening to it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever other podcast networks there are out there. You can follow me personally on social media, where I'm trying to be a little more active, at Nick from CWE. You can follow the podcast at the Microshift on social media sites out there. And we will see you next time when we talk about my time at the rescue mission of Mahoning Valley.